So this is not a good situation for workers. They're continuing to get crushed. Hello, welcome to this week's economy. I'm your host, Dr. Vance Ginn. Thank you for joining me again today. Well, today is episode 56. We've got a lot to talk about. First off, I hope you enjoyed the solar eclipse. Here in Round Rock, Texas, where I live, just north of Austin, we had a total solar eclipse. It was great to watch it with my family and then get back on to our work. But we've got to make sure that we take advantage of these God's blessings for us in our lives. I hope you were able to experience it as well. You know, in today's episode, I'm going to explain how the latest jobs report and CPI inflation report will make the Fed's job more difficult and how Biden administration and even the Trump administration contributed to this problem, why technology regulations are hindering growth, and which states are doing better at getting out of the way, and much more. So with all of that, let's get straight to it. So what did last week's U.S. jobs report for March reveal about the labor market, and are most jobs part-time, and are those jobs mostly for foreign-born workers? We've heard this a lot over the last few days, so I want to take this just a little bit further to explain what I see is going on. The U.S. jobs report for March 2024 mostly strong on the surface, but weaknesses remain as real wages are still down from January 2021. In fact, if you look at average hourly earnings, with the latest inflation number, inflation's running hot too, 3.5%. Average hourly earnings are up are down 2.5% since January 2021 when President Biden took office. If you look at average weekly earnings, so you account for the hours that they actually work throughout the week times the average hourly earnings, it's down 3.9% since January 2021. So this is not a good situation for workers. They're continuing to get crushed. I'll have more on inflation in just a minute. We also need to know that the increase last month were part-time jobs and large increase in government jobs. This report will delay the Fed's actions to raise its target interest rate, though it should cut its balance sheet more. The headline data, look robust like it has in previous month. There were 303,000 non-farm jobs added last month, plus revised up 22,000 jobs over the prior 2 months for a total of 325,000 jobs added. There was a lower unemployment rate at 3.8%. Employment to population ratio went up to 60.3%. All that looks pretty good, but when you look underneath the hood, it looks less rosy. There were 500,000 increase in household employment, which is good, but 6,100 increase in part-time work. So full-time work went down by 100,000. So that's what we've been seeing there for a while. Real average weekly earnings, like I said, were up slightly year over year, but still well below January 2021. And out of those 303,000 jobs added in March, government jobs were 71,000. So that's also a substantial number. Almost a quarter of all jobs were in the unproductive government sector. So that is not a good situation. What about the foreign-born versus native-born stipulation that some have been putting out there? Well, I think many are making an error in their assessment. I've been critical of the current labor market, as I just mentioned, for substantive reasons, like I just mentioned. Foreign-born versus native-born isn't one of them, because foreign-born includes possibly legal, who are Americans now. They were born somewhere else, but they're Americans now, and illegal immigrants. And the data don't indicate being critical of that distinction. BLS does try to account for both of these, given their statistical analysis and everything else, but they don't distinguish between foreign-born that are legal or those that are illegal. So I think it's very difficult to siphon those out. By focusing on these two groups that mostly include Americans, we are unnecessarily provoking two groups for political purposes. The reality is much more nuanced. BLS doesn't distinguish between these two characteristics in their surveys. Also, since January 2021, during Biden, native-born employment is up 7 million and foreign-born is up 6 million, which means more jobs are going to native-born either way. From January 2016 to January 2021, during Trump, native-born employment was down 1.8 million, while foreign-born employment was down just 400,000. Therefore, while it's true that foreign-born employment has been growing faster more recently, many, if not most of these are Americans who are here legally from another country. And native-born Americans were worse off during Trump. Now, of course, that includes COVID and the lockdowns, but we shouldn't have had the lockdowns, and so it would have been a much different situation had you looked to prior to the lockdowns. So let's not let politics get in the way of the data. We need native and foreign-born workers in America. There are many reasons to take on the failures of Bidenomics and even some of Trumponomics, but this isn't one of them. Let's make sure that we're not looking at politics and keeping principles at the top of our mind. That's what I will always go back to. So, in another front, on inflation, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, Americans, but CPI inflation is running hot at about 4.8% in March on an annualized basis. It was up 3.5% year over year, but if you took the 0.5 3.4% growth rate just for the month of March. That's annualized at 4.8%. This inflation is hot pretty much across many items in the basket of goods and services purchased by a typical urban household. Food prices at the grocery store remain high but aren't rising as fast, but expect to continue to see menu shocks if you go out to eat. Maybe don't go out to eat. Good luck filling up your vehicle, too, as gasoline prices are soaring, just like overall energy prices, and oil prices have been up a lot. So expect for gas prices to stay higher than usual. Inflation is getting hotter again compared to even if you exclude food and energy, right, it's still getting hotter, which is impossible to do. But stick with me if you're trying to exclude those. Core CPI inflation is up 4.8% in March on an annualized basis as well. Inflation is getting hotter again compared to what Paul Krugman, Jason Furman, and many others have been saying. I've been correct along with Larry Summers, E.J. Antoni, Peter St. Onge, and others who have similar thoughts, though we have different assumptions of how to explain this inflation. Regardless, the trend in higher inflation will make it likely impossible for the Fed to cut its target federal funds rate until at least late 2024. Which will be a challenge because Republicans and Democrats in Congress keep running up deficits, and Biden keeps jacking up regulations. Too much money chasing too few goods because of government failures will continue to crush Americans as real average weekly earnings are down, like I mentioned earlier, 2.5%, and real average weekly earnings are down 3.9% since January 2021 from a combination of Trump, Biden, Congress, Powell errors. When we need to cut the Fed's balance sheet with a focus on only price stability with monetary rule, cut federal spending and limit it to population plus inflation with the spending rule, and cut regulations and restrict higher regulations to congressional action so we can unleash prosperity in America. I think that's really how we start to do that. What's happening in the states? Well, the American Legislative Exchange Council, also known as ALEC, my good friend Jonathan Williams, and then Stephen Moore, and also Art Laffer put this out on an annual basis. This is their 17th report of rich states, poor states. And what it does is it looks at a host of different variables of their taxes, their regulations, their spending, their tax and expenditure limits, and a host of other issues. And they look at how their performance is over time and their outlook for this year, over the next year. And what they find in their outlook rankings may not surprise you. The top 10 states are Utah, Idaho, Arizona, North Carolina, Indiana, Texas, number 6, moved up from number 13. South Dakota, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and North Dakota are the top 10. The bottom 10 may also not surprise you. Hawaii, Oregon, Maryland, Minnesota, Maine, New Jersey, California, Illinois, Vermont, and last and least, New York is dead last at 50th. And what you notice about these are the top 10 states are more conservative states with less spending, relatively speaking, lower taxes. Some of those have no personal income tax, which I think is huge. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, the bottom 10 of these states are those that have more progressive policies, more blue states compared to the red states, that have higher government spending, higher taxes, and higher regulations. So they're stifling economic growth and prosperity for their people. And that also is shown up by the economic performance measures that are included in this report as well. So I think you look at Florida, economic outlook rank is 14th, but their performance was first over the last decade, according to a number of calculations. Economic outlook for Texas was 6th, but the performance rank was 6th over the last decade. California outlook is 47th, but the performance rank was 21st over the last decade. And Louisiana, I do a lot of work with, right? Their outlook rank is 31st, which is down, but the performance rank has been 50th, dead last over the last decade. And so these are why we need such huge reforms in these places to make sure that spending restraint is a big part of this. In other news, when you're thinking about AI and driverless cars and things of that nature, autonomous cars, what we need to make sure is that regulation isn't getting out of the way, that we let markets and competition really lead the way. Well, the Teamsters Unions recently won this case out in Kentucky, where Governor Beshear vetoed a driverless vehicle bill. Bad news overall. And if the Teamster Unions are winning, then people are losing. Banning things out of fear is a big part of the road to serfdom, with less liberty, less peace, and less prosperity. Instead of banning what we're scared of, why not join the market and take competitive action? Because the goal is less innovation and growth that are the foundations of, because the goal is less innovation and more innovation and growth that are the foundations of prosperity. And I mean, look, if that is their goal, is to reduce innovation and growth, instead of allowing for the foundation of prosperity to have more of those, we're never going to be in a good situation. And that's why I say people lose when unions win. So that's something we need to check out. And other good news that's out there, there was a crucial one-door state innovation waivers were just passed in the House Workforce Bill, WIOA, H.R. 6655, thanks to the leadership of many in Congress, including Speaker Mike Johnson. It's a great tweet by Rachel Barkley, who is the executive director of the Alliance for Opportunity, where I also do some work with them. In Texas and other states, they're looking at interim charges, or they're currently in their legislative cycles right now. And I think it's important to consider what are the factors that they should be looking at now and in the future. And so my big five are that, especially in Texas, I wrote this for Texas, but this is across the board for other states as well, even the federal government, by the way, in some cases. But number one, they need stronger constitutional and spending limits that covers the entire budget with limit of population growth plus inflation. Number two, provide for eliminating property tax and franchise taxes and other bad taxes with less government spending resulted in a flat, low final sales tax rate. Three, eliminate onerous housing regulations like reducing lot sizes and subsidies like costly housing vouchers to make housing affordable again. Number four, remove barriers to work like occupational licensing, minimum wages, and failed training programs. Number five, modernize school finance with universal ESAs, eliminate the rest of the antiquated, complicated monopoly government school finance system, and just have it funded by students over systems. I think that will be so important as we move forward in that area and have more pro-growth policies. This week, as far as media, what I've been doing is I'm giving a speech at the Concrete Conference in Austin, Texas, put on by the CMIC Council of Texas, along with the Texas Department of Transportation, while I'll discuss the need for life cycle cost analysis and how institutions matter. Don't miss my commentary on how the NGO National Association of Insurance Commissioners, also known as NAIC, is trying to hurt your retirement, that I have at the Daily Caller. Check out my latest piece at EconLib, where I lay out Biden's war on credit, especially low-income earners, and see my latest research on how Wyoming can reduce its property tax burden by simply limiting government spending at Texans for fiscal responsibility. You can find that in a link always in the show notes page. Watch this week's Let People Prosper episode with David Bahnsen of the Bahnsen Group as we discuss his latest book, Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life, and what comprises a free and virtuous society. It's an excellent discussion. It's an excellent book that I think you should go out and check out. But please check out that podcast and share it with others. The upcoming Let People Prosper episode on Monday is with Dr. Kevin Kozar of American Enterprise Institute. He used to be at R Street Institute, on why government projects don't work as intended. Great discussion there as well. The quote of the week is by Adam Smith. By pursuing his own interest, the individual frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than when he really intends to promote it. I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good. End quote. Great wise words by Adam Smith, the father of modern economics. The Bible verse of the week is from Titus 2:11-12. For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age. I know that's for me. I hope it is the same for you as well. Hope you have a great weekend and a great week next week. Please go out and give me a 5-star rating and rate and review this wherever you get your podcast. Remember, you can find all the show notes at vanceginn.substack.com or go to vanceginn.com. And look, I appreciate you coming and joining me every week on Friday for This Week's Economy. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Please share with your friends and family. And until next time, let people prosper.